All right, what's going on? If you're here right now, this is the Ascension of Babylon. And what we do is we talk about the occult, we talk about spiritual self development, we talk about the healing process. And it's my intention to give you support in your process of self development and remembering who and what you actually are. Now, getting right into the topic of discussion, we're going to be talking about this social media algorithm. I think this is a very important topic to kind of get into because we are in a day and age where most people are very much blended with the social media algorithm. And, social media isn't a bad thing, and this video is not to demonize it or anything like that. But I am going to be telling you the downsides, and I am going to be telling you the absolute raw truth about the algorithm and the people who control the algorithm itself, so you can have a more authentic connection with the algorithm. So, jumping right into it. I think where I want to start is the people who control and excuse me, the way that these algorithms are going to be people who are more so of a narcissistic and sociopathic nature. And they want to control your consciousness. They want to control what you believe. They want to control what you think. They want to basically dictate the relationship that you have with yourself because it gives them a feeling of safety knowing they're in control of you. So, whenever we're talking about a sociopath or a narcissist, there's going to be these methods of control that they implement over other people to feel safe because they're identified with these protective programs in their psyche that make them feel as if this is what they need to do. And all of this is rooted in early childhood trauma, and it's the way that they actually keep themselves from feeling the emotions that are in connection with the different traumas that they have experienced. So these very wealthy and very influential people, they structure an algorithm that is actually designed to have you promoting unhealthy coping, unhealthy behaviors, belief systems and perceptions and ways of doing things that are actually very limiting, and they're more in association with what I like to call the false self. So what the false self is it's basically comprised of these different protective programs that we start creating during childhood trauma. So bringing you back to childhood trauma, we go through trauma, and when this takes place, what happens is we fragment from the emotions that we're feeling when whatever the experience was is happening. So we fragment from the emotions because typically we don't really feel safe expressing them. Maybe we were taught that it's inappropriate to be angry around so and so, or we can't bring this kind of behavior to the dinner table. And this gives us this subconscious suggestion that it's not safe to be authentic, and it's not safe for us to express our emotions. So now we create an identity, and this identity is going to have its own belief systems, and oftentimes we have different identities that we attach to throughout our life. We create this identity through the fragmentation process, and it's meant to shell us away from those different emotions that we're feeling. And once again, these identities and even sub-personalities, they have their own narratives, they're programmed, so they have like a level of sentience to them. And oftentimes we're unconscious of how they're running our system and operating. And these programs have belief systems, perceptions, and their own ways to them. And we filter our reality through these different programs. And We do this to keep ourselves safe so we can function in the world and have families and go to work and go to school and stuff like that, and even have a relationship with our parents and, when we're like living with our parents and stuff like that. But this comes at a major price. And the price is we're not actually being authentic because we're filtering our life experience through these protective programs. And the true self is not in a space of feeling like it needs to protect itself or feeling like it needs to shell itself away. The true self is raw, it's authentic, it's honest, it's open, and it's able to be vulnerable because it knows that everything is always working out for it and there's nothing actually to be afraid of. But most people on our planet today are identified with these protective programs, and therefore they're not actually able to be authentic. They're not really in connection with that divine source energy. And when we're in connection with the divine source energy, we cannot be controlled by the people that are very hell-bent on controlling us. So these are people that understand the deeper workings of the psyche. They know how it functions, they know how it operates, and they usually have a lot more knowledge on these things than the average person does because they have a lot of influence and they have a lot of money and they have a lot of, access to this information. So what they do is they weaponize this knowledge against people by creating things like algorithms that are meant to feed these protective adaptations so people identify with the adaptation even more than they're already identifying with it. So once again, when we're authentic, we cannot be controlled by these kinds of individual, and they lose their ability to control the mass collective consciousness. But when we're not being authentic because we're subconsciously identified with these parts of us that we think are us, but they're actually not, this is when we can actually be controlled by these kinds of individuals. And because, they're operating from narcissism and sociopathy, oftentimes, they want to control you. They want to control me, and they implement all of these different strategies through the major industries, schooling, entertainment, music, and social media algorithms to keep that control over the mass collective consciousness. If they can control what you think, what you believe, how you identify with yourself, then this is kind of making them feel safe. And if you're one of these people that's able to be controlled, you're allowing yourself to be controlled subconsciously because identifying with those false programs that the social media algorithm is often promoting, it makes you feel safe. Because being authentic and getting to that space where we're connecting with the source energy is a process, and it can be very, very difficult, and we have to work through a lot of unsafety to get to that space to where we actually feel safe just being ourselves. It can sound a little crazy if you're new here or maybe you don't have this education, but most people, and I used to be one of them, are terrified of being who they actually are because they've been identified with this false self human ego construct for so long that that's actually all they know. So the social media algorithm is very much in resonance with this false self construct, and it actually rewards you for being fake. It rewards you for being inauthentic. It rewards you for promoting limiting belief systems, limiting perceptions, and things like unhealthy coping, because these are all strategies of the false self to keep itself alive and to run the show within your internal ecosystem, shelling you away from your true self essence. Because when you're your true self, the false self no longer is able to control your system and your life unconsciously. And once again, if you're being your true self, then these individuals in power who control the algorithm, who are operating from their false self, and they're controlling you to keep their false self alive, they no longer have the power to do so. So if you take a look at the algorithm, things like TikTok or whatever the algorithm is, Instagram, YouTube, anything that has an algorithm, there's often these trends, and these trends might promote unhealthy behaviors, even promote the entertainment industry, which is something that's also used as a form of psychic warfare. So certain songs that are promoting unhealthy coping and limiting mindsets and division and stuff like that. Maybe you can you can get more views on TikTok if you add this song that's promoting over sexualization, or is promoting some type of division, you versus me, or promoting some kind of unhealthy coping. And the algorithm just uses all of these different strategies to hook you to it, and to have you being addicted to unhealthy coping mechanisms and addicted to your false identity complex in different parts of yourself. And as it's promoting you being addicted to these parts and unhealthy coping and things of that nature, other people are becoming addicted to it more and more. And it's creating this entire matrix that people don't really know that they're locking themselves in, but are absolutely locking themselves into, because they're operating from this algorithmic consciousness. And once again, this starts with early childhood trauma. You have to be in resonance with it. But what these major industries do is they throw programming and conditioning on top of it to keep you in resonance with it, so you don't actually break out of that matrix and see yourself as you are and make the necessary changes that you need to make to be more authentic. They want to hook you on the latest trend. They want you to feed the algorithm, and therefore, because the algorithm's in resonance with inauthenticity and your false self, you're feeding these parts of you that, yes, you created to protect you from the heavy emotions associated with trauma that you didn't know how to process, but these parts of you are keeping you from being who and what you actually are. So now with everything I'm explaining, you can kind of see how they create this very confining matrix. Now, what the algorithm also does is it promotes content that is spiking your dopamine, or it's having we could say it's increasing your dopamine release. And you can have a dopamine release and feel euphoria and feel good and feel happiness doing something that is not authentic. And this is oftentimes what these algorithms are doing. And this goes back to protective adaptations. You have protective adaptations in your psyche, and they have a level of intelligence, and they know how to create a release within your system of dopamine. And oftentimes it could be the unhealthy relationship. It could be, using substances or doing that thing that intuitively, isn't necessarily the best choice from you. Your fragmentations or your protective adaptations in parts, they have this intelligence, and they have certain mindsets and belief systems that they follow that you actually think are your belief systems, and they're not. And they'll kind of give you certain urges to do certain things that are giving you a dopamine release. And the reason why this is, it's because it's a way of bypassing what you're really feeling inside. So that's the trauma and all of the different emotions that are associated with it. The anger, the depression, the hopelessness, the abandonment, right? All of the negative emotions that as human beings we typically want to avoid by feeling good. This is what these parts show you away from. But the thing is, if you don't build a connection with those emotions, you can never Be authentic to who and what you truly are, because these emotions are a frequency. They carry an energetic resonance, and they're keeping you in this lower frequency state the more you try to ignore them. The more you try to, have a dopamine release, when in reality, the reason why you keep needing to, search for these dopamine hits is because deep down you feel lonely. You feel angry, you feel abandoned, you feel all of the things that you started feeling during early childhood trauma. So you need to connect with these emotions because they lead you to other parts of your psyche that are carrying the memories and that are carrying the energies and the burden of that early childhood trauma, and different traumas that early childhood trauma recreated at different points of your life. So, abusive relationships and betrayals that you went through and things of that nature, things that happen at school, things that happen down the line. It's all a replay of this original energetic resonance that you've been carrying since early childhood trauma. And if you know anything about shadow work, to embody the light, you have to go into the shadows and into the darkness. But the social media algorithm is trying to keep you away from that. It's trying to keep you away from being accountable for these different energies that are existing inside of you. It's trying to keep you from actually connecting with these emotions so you can be more authentic to who you are. And this is because the people that control the algorithm know that if you start processing these traumas and you start ending the cycles of having to create experiences that re-traumatize you because they're just connected to these original traumas that you've been through that are trying to resolve themselves, they know if they do this, they can control you. And because they're so traumatized, they feel safe by controlling you the same way that you feel safe by managing your stress response and managing your emotions in a way that's not healthy, by connecting with these protector parts of you. So there is, or let me say, not connecting, but over identifying with these protector parts. So there's a direct connection between the algorithm and the false self, which is comprised of these protective adaptations or these protector parts of you. And the algorithm is designed to feed your identification with these parts of you that make up the false self. And it programs you to do certain things that promote the false self and program more of a false self identification into the people who are feeding into your content and watching your content. And this creates this entire very confining matrix that people are existing in. Now, social media is not a bad thing. I think it's actually a really great thing, even though it has its downside. Everything is our relationship to it. So if you're already doing the deeper healing work and you're retrieving these different parts of you that are burdened with trauma, and you're unblending from these protective adaptations, knowing the clear difference between the true self and the false self, if you're really embracing the deeper work, then you don't have to worry about the social media algorithm. It's not going to be able to affect you in the same way. And if you're a person like me who makes this kind of content and you're being as authentic as you know how to be, it's going to have a really positive effect on the mass collective consciousness in general. And you're going to find people who are naturally in resonance with that level of authenticity. But at the end of the day, the algorithm is designed to keep you addicted to it. It's designed to have you release dopamine. It's designed to keep you dependent on it. It's designed to promote unhealthy relationships and, kind of create these subconscious patterns in you that have you identifying maybe with things like unhealthy relationships, which are a confining matrix in its own. And it's designed to have people that are very identified with the false self, influencing other people to also be identified with the false self. But inherently, even though it's used as a form of control, it is a good thing, right? Having phones and having, technology and having the algorithm and stuff like that, you can have a healthy relationship with it. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. And I'm not necessarily demonizing it or anything like that. But of course, with every positive, there's also going to be a negative, and the negative to the algorithm is what it typically promotes. It's much easier to blow up, for instance, on something like TikTok, kind of promoting all these types of unhealthy behaviors and attacking other people and talking shit about people and promoting division and hatred, than it actually is just being authentic and promoting healing and promoting, a deeper understanding of the psyche and promoting the authentic self. And it's not only TikTok, it's other algorithms as well. They're not going to push your content as much if you're a person who's not feeding the algorithm what it wants, and if you're not a person that's, spiking dopamine in other people in an inauthentic way and getting people addicted to that release and having people identify and blend even more with these protective adaptations in their psyche. Now, before I end the video, that is not to say that you can't be authentic and, start having the algorithm work for you and, find your tribe of people that, follow you for the right reasons and want to embrace their true authenticity. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying more often than not, the algorithm is absolutely designed to prop up the false self. That is just what it does. But it doesn't mean that you can't be authentic and be a successful content creator. And it doesn't mean that there's not authentic content creators who are successful at what they do, whether it's TikTok or YouTube. But on an overall level, the algorithm is designed to control you.